Hey, it's Melissa from Colts, Crimes, and Cabernet. Welcome to our booth at 2020 CrimeCon. Thanks for stopping in. Look around our social media platforms and our website. Lots of murder merchandise for any holiday gifts or just something special for yourself. While we're out of our virtual booth looking around CrimeCon, we wanted to bring you one of our favorite episodes so far. Hope you enjoy. See you soon, and remember, kindness only, kindness always.
I'm Whitney.
And I'm Melissa.
We are podcast addicts,
Obsessed with true crime.
winos,
Boy moms.
and both live in Texas.
We met about 2 years ago and became best friends almost instantly.
When we discovered our obsession with true crime and all that it encompasses.
We decided to bring our love of podcast and wine to you.
Season 1 will take us on a state-by-state journey as we discuss the atrocities around America.
We will be covering everything from cults to kidnappings,
To murder and all that falls in between.
This is Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet.
Okay. All right, guys, welcome back. So this week we are going to start a whole new, tradition?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going to call it?
Yeah.
Okay, a whole new tradition, and we're going to start having a wine of the week, new wine, different type of wine. I'm trying to get Melissa out of her Pinot Grigio box because this week we are going to have boxed wine, the good old Frenzia. So this week is brought to you by Frenzia.
Yes. Next week, we're going to have some local.
Yeah,
wine.
some fancy, something different, new. We tried it today, and it was really good. So that'll be next week, but we'll go today with the usual.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and jump in with my Illinois murder.
I say Illinois.
You say because you pronounce every letter.
Yes.
I'm pretty
But
sure it's
everyone-
Illinois.
Everyone from California, everyone that I grew up always said Illinois. But I think it's...
I think it's Illinois.
I think it is.
But how do you
too.
say New Orleans?
New Orleans?
Oh, see, it's Nolans.
That's not real.
Okay. So Illinois, or Melissa's Illinois. I chose Chester Weger, and I'm not sure if that's pronounced right. It's Weger, so that's what we're going with. He is known as the Starved Rock Killer, and we'll get into the reason of the name. It's an interesting name. I got some info from the usual Wikipedia, those dadgum notifications. Okay. I got some info from the usual Wikipedia, the Chicago Tribune, and as well as I'd also American Hauntings Inc.
Okay.
or American Haunting Sync.
One or the other.
One or the other.
You
That's
make
what
your mind
happens
up.
when you copy URLs. You don't really know what it means. Okay. So, on March 14th of 1960, so this is kind of a ways back, the bludgeoned bodies of 3 women from Riverside, Illinois, which is a suburb to Chicago, was found in Starved Rock State Park. So, hence the name. Yeah. There is some canyons near a place called Utica. The park was named after a rock fortress on the Illinois River where a tribe of, and this is definitely going to be butchered, Illiniwek, Illiniwek.
Okay.
Illiniwek Indians were besieged in the 17th century. Their tribe dwindled due to starvation, and warriors attempted to escape, but they were slaughtered in the surrounding forest. So that's a little bit of history on you. It's sad, but now you know kind of where you're at. So 3 women, they were friends: Mildred Lindquist, Lillian Oetting, Oetting.
Sounds good.
Oetting. We'll call her Lillian. And Frances Murphy had taken a trip for a 4-day holiday in the park. Employees of the park, they remember them arriving at the resort, and they pulled up in Frances's gray station wagon. They parked. They unloaded their bags. They registered for 2 different rooms. Of course, dropped off their bags in the rooms, ate lunch in the dining area, and then kind of talked about going for a hike. Okay. They liked to take nature pictures. So they grabbed their camera and binoculars and headed out the door.
Okay.
Again, this is the 60s, so
Yeah,
that's kind of what they did.
Yeah, just thinking, gonna
Yeah.
have a fun day.
Yeah.
Adventure.
And this is in March, so it's still kind of colder weather. A
Mhm.
little bit of snow on the ground up there. So it was covered with a light dusting of snow, and they kind of trudged through with their rubber boots on and just made the best of it. They paused occasionally to take photographs. And when they got out about a mile from the lodge, they came to the dead end of St. Louis Canyon. It's like a steep rocky wall, and it has this, as quoted from many a website that I looked at, a majestic and then frozen waterfall.
Oh.
So I'm sure
that
they were taking
sounds
pictures
nice.
of it. But I'm sure it was beautiful. So that's kind of like the last known whereabouts of them, that they were out in this waterfall area. So first sign of trouble, Lillian's husband, George, tried to call his wife at the lodge because she said she had checked in and she hadn't. But you know how when girls kind of get off on a girl trip, they're caught up in the moment. They forgot to check in or whatever. So he just thought they were maybe having a good time. A staff member at the resort said, "Oh, I did see the women. They'd gone out for hiking, and I'm sure she'll call you in the morning." So of course, in the 60s, he was like, "No big deal. I'll go to bed for the evening. We'll try again in the morning."
Boy, do I wish we were in those times.
Right? So such simpler times then. So the next day, on Tuesday, he called again, and another employee who answered also said, mistakenly, that the three women had been seen at breakfast and were out of the lodge at the time. So he was like, "Oh, they had breakfast in the morning.
They've
Gone back out to hike. She's just caught up in the moment. No big deal." Went on with his day-to-day Tuesday activities.
Stinks.
Yeah. So that night, a late winter storm hit in the canyon, with several inches of snow. So this hid footprints. It hid
Oh my gosh.
evidence. It
Probably
hid,
wiped away most evidence.
yeah, blood stains. It covered everything.
This is just like bad luck after bad luck.
Yes. So Wednesday morning came. George again tried to call his wife, and again they were not located because they were dead. So he was like, "Listen, dude, I'm worried about my wife. Can you please just check the rooms to see just to check on them? Like, it's weird for her to not call after 3 days." So an employee entered their rooms and noticed that their beds and bags were untouched, meaning they've not been back there since the first day they got there.
Okay, so now it's time to alert the police.
Correct. They also ran over to the parking lot and realized that the car had also been untouched. The snow was all still covering it. There was no...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, the realization kicked in that his wife has now been missing for over 40 hours. Like, it's freak out time. We need to call someone.
If the car had been moved since the snowstorm, they would be able to tell. So because of the snowstorm, they had a definite time frame.
So it's like a blessing that the snow was there to, to, you know, give a definitive time. They know that the car didn't move.
Yeah,
it was definite that the car did not move.
Yes.
And then, but it also washed away a lot of other evidence that they're going to need.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So George had a friend. He was the operating director of the Chicago Crime Commission.
It's always good to know people.
Yep. Networking is key here. His name was Virgil Peterson. When he learned of the news, he contacted state police and the other agencies there in the area to help search people, to help create a search party so that people could hopefully find them. Within minutes, the LaSalle County Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Ray Utzi began organizing a search. So they had people on the ground looking. Bill Danley was a local newspaper reporter. He kind of got wind of this disappearance. He grabbed a camera, ran out the door, headed to the park to see if he could catch a story. As he was getting to the park, he heard a kid shouting that bodies had been found on one of the trails.
Oh,
and so, of course, he jumps out and runs because what reporter wouldn't, right?
Wants to be the first one.
Danley also called the lodge where the law enforcement had gathered, just to say, "Hey, these kids are screaming that the bodies have been found. Is this y'all? Is this something different?" Which, I mean, I guess that's interesting for a reporter to do. So Danley, of course, makes his way down these trails, and he was one of the first people to see the bodies.
Oh, wow.
So these kids are what found these bodies.
Okay, so he was, well, that's a story.
Yeah. The 3 mutilated women were lying side by side on their backs under a small ledge. The lower clothing was removed, and their legs were spread open. Oh, trigger warning. I probably should have. I'm really bad about this. This is graphic, detailed, please.
You've already heard some of it.
It's
so
yeah.
Yes.
It's too late to rewind. Each had been beaten on their head, and 2 of the bodies were tied together with a heavy twine.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So, of course, the investigation was like, let's go. Began immediately. The snow did cause some problems because...
Yes.
Everywhere except the ledge the bodies were under was covered with about 6 inches of snow. So they had to carefully remove the fine white powder in almost like layers to kind of figure out, is there any evidence in this layer? Nope. Okay, dust it back. It's kind of like paleontology. Like, don't break anything. Just do it slowly.
We might need this later. So.
Yes. But they did realize that there were some signs of struggle within the white powder, so that obviously the women tried to fight back.
Well, good for them.
So in this area, Miss Murphy's camera was found about 10 feet away from the victims. It had blood on it, and the strap was broken, again indicating some sort of struggle. A short distance away from that, the state attorney, Harland Warren, stumbled across a frozen tree limb that was streaked with blood. So bastion heads found a tree branch. They kind of put 2 to 2 together. This could potentially be a murder weapon.
Okay.
The snow beneath it, of course, was also covered with blood. So they're like, yep, that must be it, because there's too much blood on this tree branch for it to be anything else. Evidence also led the investigators to believe that the women were killed deeper into the canyon and then kind of drug back out and positioned under the rock ledge. It took the state crime lab officials and pathologists hours to get there. So like the bodies were just left there in the open, you know, like no one was able to touch them. Well, I'm sure there's footprints everywhere, because, you know, back in those days there was no like chain of command or anything like that. People just kind of wandered around.
The reporter was there.
Obviously the reporter was there.
Kids.
Yes. And there's photos, so don't go searching for them if you're
not
faint of heart. Yeah. If you're not into that, don't go search for them, because there are photos out there that I stumbled across in the research of this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So once the investigation in place was completed, they loaded the bodies up and took them to Hulse Funeral Home in Ottawa, and that's where the autopsies began to take place. The women had obviously been molested, but the cold and limited technology at the time, again, 60s, they weren't able to tell if it was molestation or if it was rape or like what degree of molestation it could have been. They were able to determine the time of death, which is shortly after they had enjoyed lunch at the lodge.
Oh,
so they'd been there for a couple days at this point.
So really, like, they probably just barely started their hike type of thing.
Well, I'm assuming they made it to the waterfall, and it happened shortly after the waterfall, because there's pictures on the camera of the waterfall.
Okay, so they made it all the way there. And
yes. Or in the area.
And they might be able to tell based on what was in their stomach.
Correct. So no motive was suggested at that point. And then everything kind of went cold. Because little evidence.
And if it's random.
And so a lot of like crazy wild theories developed. There was a lot of confusion over the jurisdiction, because it was in a park, and then is it state, is it local, is it FBI, like who do we call in on this? So there was a lot of like tainting of the investigation in regards to that. Yeah,
they already had it so hard, and then now we're gonna fumble with the investigation.
Yes. So then of course panic set in, and gun sales went up. Deadbolts were flying off the shelves. Everyone's freaking out that someone's gonna bust into their house and drag them out the door. Newspaper articles just kept pressuring police officials to make progress, which is great. Like, continue to put pressure on them, make sure that this case can get solved. So I talked about Harland Warren. He was that investigator, or the state attorney, earlier on in the investigation. Yeah, he had a hard time of kind of coping with the pressure, because it was an election year, and of course he's trying.
Yes.
So he just became infatuated with this case. He bought a microscope with his own money. He conducted the study of the twine that was used to bound the 2 women.
Oh, wow.
like crazy research, and it revealed that 2 different types of twine were used, a 20-ply cord and a 12-ply cord. Warren then handpicked 2 county deputies that would report only to him. They were concerned about, again, the tainting of the investigation because there was so much back and forth about it. He picked a gentleman by the name of Bill Dummett, 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 and Wayne Hess. They were both trustworthy and intelligent, and they were very good rule followers. Like, they would not be leaking anything to the press. They wouldn't be good. Yeah, they were very trustworthy detectives to kind of spearhead this investigation. So the search to find the twine began at the lodge, because in nature there's not just rolls of twine hanging out in trees. So
the twine had been
somewhere.
Murderer.
Yeah, it had to have been somewhere in the area, most likely.
Yeah.
So they thought, well, we'll start at the lodge because that's the closest physical place to where the murder occurred. It didn't take long. Warren found both kinds of twine used in the murder in the lodge's kitchen.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Used for wrapping food, and think about like a roast.
Yeah.
Like when you wrap a roast or anything like that. So they found it in the kitchen. They used purchasing records to track down the manufacturing, which is like big time for the 60s.
Big
like,
time.
Good job, guys.
I'm so proud of them.
Right?
Okay.
So they tracked down the manufacturer, and just as Warren had suspected, the killer either worked at or had access to the lodge kitchen.
Okay.
Which he kind of suspected that all along. All of the employees at the lodge, of course, were given polygraph tests because that's what they did then. Yes. They all passed. Warren hired a prominent specialist from Chicago who was really like big into the polygraph, and he knew this is how you beat it. This is what you look like if you're trying to beat it. Those types of things. And he made everyone take another exam. The first dozen kind of were like quickly cleared, and then this former dishwasher by the name of Chester Weger showed up.
He's a murderer.
Spoiler, I already told you.
No.
As soon as he left the cabin where these interviews were taking place, they set up a cabin there at the lodge. As soon as he walked out of the cabin, the technician turned to Warren and said, "That's your man."
Oh my gosh.
So at that time, I don't think he passed.
Don't think he
No.
passed.
So at the time, Weger was 21. He was this slight, small man. He had a wife. He had 2 young children. He was working at the park until that summer he resigned to go into business with his father as a house painter. So he was just kind of working through the summer. And then Warren kind of pushed on the investigation a little bit of Weger. And Weger cooperated. He's like, I didn't have anything to do with it. He surrendered a piece of a jacket he had owned that had some suspicious, quote, dark stains to be tested. It later turned out to be human blood, but at the time they didn't have the ability to determine if it was the same blood type or the same blood as the women.
Oh my gosh.
Couldn't be typed, couldn't be matched to any specific victim. And then, of course, he failed an entire series of polygraph tests after that. He was put under constant surveillance by the state police. Dummett, one of the detectives that he trusted, came across a reported rape and robbery that took place about a mile down the road from Starved Rock in 1959. And the details from that case kind of matched Weger's description and his whereabouts at the time. The timelines kind of worked out. So he kind of brought it up to Warren, and he's like, look, I think this might be where he started, and maybe he escalated to murder. He of course wasn't convicted of that rape and robbery. It connected.
Okay.
So with Warren's approval, Dummett took a stack of mugshots to a woman who reported the rape. She sorted through all of them, and there was probably 20 to 30. Like, there was quite a few. She sorted through them and then began to scream immediately as she saw his face.
Oh my gosh.
So obviously that's considered positive identification. Yep. And then Warren ordered the arrest of Chester. He was going to, exactly. Maybe that's where this came from.
Maybe.
He could have ordered the arrest of Chester, but he waited a second because of the impending re-election. He was afraid of the bad light it would shed on him to, what did he say? As a quote stunt to retain his position. He was afraid people would think that he arrested this gentleman on these
Just
charges
to-
just to get into
Okay.
office. So he kind of waited a little bit, and he lost the election. So
Oh.
it's just sad, yeah. But he still had time in office to pursue this case. So you know how elections
Yeah.
work. You have a little bit of time afterwards before you have to switch over.
It's like, let's get some shit done now.
Yeah. So he went ahead and arrested him on the 59 rape charges and hoped that he would confess to the Starved Rock murders.
Okay.
So
Not a foolproof plan.
Yeah. But he apprehended him. They brought him into an interrogation room and for hours, of course, questioned him about the rape, pressed into him a little bit about the murders. They kept him in the room until after midnight, which, you know, those old techniques of just pushing and pushing and pushing. And then Weger stopped mid-sentence and asked to see his family. Okay, so a police car went and picked up his mother and father and brought them to the courthouse. He was allowed to speak with his parents. And then he spoke with Dummett and confessed. He said, okay, I did it. I got scared. I tried to grab their pocketbook. They fought and I hit them. The pocketbook he's referring to, he was actually the camera. He thought it was a purse, but it was a camera.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So minutes later, of course, this confession has already been transcribed and signed by him. During this process, he was asked why did you drag the bodies under the overhang? Because there was clear evidence of them being drugged. And he said, well, he saw a small airplane flying low over the park. So they were like, huh, that's interesting. So, of course, they went to the local airport and got a pilot's testimony and logbook. And a flight plan through that area was actually on paper. So that's a pretty telling evidence because that's not anything that the police knew or it hadn't been leaked. So that was corroborated.
Yes.
He would later confess a few more times, and he even went to the location and reenacted the killings for police and reporters.
Okay.
But then suddenly he had a meeting with a court-appointed attorney, and he changed his tune and recanted his confession completely, claiming it was made under stress and that he was being threatened by his interrogators. A grand jury returned indictments against Weger for all 3 murders, as well as the rape and robbery that had occurred in 59, because of him fitting the description and, of course, the photo lineup, the positive identification. But the state decided, you know what? We're not going to go after you for the rape and robbery. We're just going to work on the murder.
Okay.
So the trial began February 13th, 1961. Weger's defense attorney, they pushed heavily on the fact that the investigators pushed a confession. They tried to say, oh, he was, coerced into this confession, all those things.
I don't think they have much evidence against him.
There's no DNA wasn't a real thing there.
I know, but all you have is like eyewitness. And I guess back then they took eyewitness testimony a little bit more than they do now, definitely.
But I mean, he reenacted these killings. They had to have matched somewhat.
That's true.
If he was like, oh no, we were dancing the cha-cha and I whacked her with a
that's true.
log. If it didn't match up, I feel like it's gotta be close, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. You.
So he's saying they pushed me into this confession, and then at the trial he said, I was washing dishes at the time the murders happened, and then I went down to the basement of the lodge, but because they found the twine in the kitchen, like you had access to it. He also had scratches on his face right after the murder.
Okay, that's some evidence.
Yeah. And they were like, well, what's that from? And he's like, oh, they're from shaving. Are they? And then, of course, the blood stains, they're kind of inconclusive. They were human blood. They don't know who from or whatever. So March 3rd, 61, the jury returned a guilty verdict and fixed a sentence of life imprisonment. So, however, November of 2019 rolled around and he was granted parole.
What?
Yeah.
So he's just
to
out
this
here.
point. Well, yeah, to this point, I mean, to this day, he still says I was innocent after all these decades. He was denied parole like 6 or 7 times, maybe more than that. And they were finally like, okay, look, let's just let him out. He's 80.
Oh, is he 80?
Yeah, he's been there for 60 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was 59 years of being incarcerated. He was released to a Chicago mission that they aided parolees with some rehabilitation. So on February 21st of this year, he was released.
Holy moly.
A little bit of a roller coaster.
That is. I didn't expect that because they like never get released.
They do now.
Apparently they do. They either kill themselves in prison or something mysteriously happens.
Exactly.
Wow. All right. So he's walking among us. Does it say where he moved to?
No.
Oh, okay.
Or I didn't see anything of where.
Eek. Eek, eek. Okay. For this week, I am doing the state of Indiana. Indiana holds, I don't want to say my favorite case, but a case for me that I want solved like no other. Like, this case is what I search this case on a regular basis just to see if there's any news or
any updates.
Yes, exactly. It is the Delphi, Indiana murders of Abby Williams and Liberty German. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in with the details. So Libby and Abby had the day off of school. I think it was a Monday, possibly.
Teacher work day?
Yes, probably a teacher work day because it was February 13th, and this was in 2017. All right, so they were home, not doing anything, just hanging out, and they wanted to go do something. They're bored. They want to go do something. They get permission to go down to like the local, almost like a county park is what I can kind of compare it to, like a little area that kids go on trails. There's, benches, that kind of stuff. They get permission to do that. They had to get a ride though. So they had to talk into Liberty's older sister to be like, hey, can you give us a ride there? She's like, yeah, as soon as I'm go to work, I'll drop you guys off on my way, type of thing.
Yes.
Okay. So Kelsey drops him off. All right, she drops him off about I don't know, 1:30ish, I think, about 1:30. All right. So the girls are just having a good time. They're posting on social media. Remember, this is 2017. The girls already had Snapchat. They're 13 and 14 at this point.
Yeah. So this is very recent. I would consider very recent.
Yes, compared to a lot of other ones that we researched.
My 1960s one just now. Yeah, yes. This is very recent.
Okay, so they're posting on social media, Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
That was about 2:07. They had posted the last time on social media or whatever. So the girls were supposed to be picked up about 3:15.
Oh gosh.
Okay, so Libby's dad was supposed to get them on his way home from work. So they had this all planned out. The girls have cell phones. Like, you would think this is just completely safe territory. Like, hey, I don't really have to worry about my kid in the small town. They could go to the park.
Yeah.
As teenagers. During broad daylight. During the week.
Yes.
I don't know if more murders happen on the weekends. I feel like they would. But
I don't know. I'd have to look up that stat.
Yeah, like the days. Because they do have the stats of like the off topic really quick. Like the signs, the astrological signs.
Yeah.
Like who committed to the most murders. You feel like what day of the week? I feel like days of the week would be a thing. Or no, but I guess because I'm not a murderer. But like, I guess some murders just happen like in the heat of the moment while some are planned. But I guess if you're planning a murder, would you pick which day of the week it happens on?
Maybe.
I feel like I would as a murderer. I need to do this on a weekend because it's not good. Well, probably a Saturday because it would be weird to kill someone on a Sunday.
Yeah, it'd be weird to kill someone on a Sunday.
Yes. But anyways, okay. So back to Libby's dad, supposed to be picking him up about 3:15. Couldn't find him. They were supposed to meet him like at the trail's head where there's a parking lot and stuff like that. They weren't there, so of course he calls them. No answer. It did ring for a bit. Eventually it did go straight to voicemail. So either it died at some point during this time, maybe because he called endlessly, as any dad would do.
Yeah.
Okay, so Libby's dad, he goes ahead and calls other family, like, hey, maybe someone else picked them up. Let me check. Nobody has heard from them. Nobody has seen them. So all the families, both of the families, come out and they start looking for the girls. Maybe they got off trail. They're lost. Maybe one sprained an ankle. That's your go-to things that you think about. Like, that could actually happen.
Yes.
They start looking. It's about 5:30 when they decide to go ahead and call law enforcement because they're not finding them. It's getting late. This was February, so I'm sure they were expecting a decently cold night. They're like, we just need these girls found.
Yes.
Okay, so law enforcement goes out. They start searching the woods. No foul play is expected at all. Like, they literally are like, the girls are lost. Let's go find them. Okay. So the law enforcement called off the search late into the night. They worked for quite a few hours. They called off the search just because it is trail, it's rocky terrain, and they didn't want any of them getting hurt or anything.
Yeah.
A few family members, I believe, kept searching, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Okay, next morning, law enforcement gets ready. They break up into groups like how they do on search parties. They get out there.
Work the grid.
And it was about noon that next day, so February 14th, Valentine's Day, that they did find their bodies about a half a mile from the bridge. So now this bridge is no longer used bridge. It's like one of those really cool places. I always think that you go and take pictures.
Yeah.
That's kind of, so the bridge is kind of blocked off in a way, and it just says not, I don't know, like, don't go across. I don't know.
Okay.
And then at the end, it's kind of like a dead end because now no one goes over there. So it's just woods. It's woods, and it backs up into people's properties eventually. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. So their bodies were found about a half a mile from that bridge. So that's not too far in. You would think with all that searching, I mean, for over 12 hours, like, or, you know, even if they stopped at night, you think that they would have found them, but they didn't. Okay. Until the next morning or the next day at noon.
Okay.
Okay. So this case is so publicized right now because 2 little girls getting killed in the middle of the day, just it's unheard of. And if you're familiar at all, there has not been very many details released in this case. Law enforcement have kept this, more than any other case I've ever seen, they've kept a lid on this case. It has never been released of how they were murdered. And if they were sexually assaulted or not. There's so many details not released. They have come out with more and more over the last 3 years, just trying to catch a break, but they have not been able to so far. Okay, so the law enforcement did say, though, that there were multiple signatures left by the killer. Now, signatures to me are like something purposely done in my mind.
Yes.
So, like, something purposely done in, I just I can't imagine why, like, this couldn't have been planned.
No.
The girls had no idea that they were even going to get a ride to go there or anything like that. So, my questioning is, like, why signatures? That's weird. That's some crazy serial killer stuff.
Yeah.
That's not your normal,
Nope.
hey, I'm just, like, I saw them, it was like an opportunity, and
No.
I can't imagine the signatures. That freaks me out. I don't know why. More than a lot of things. Okay. So, of course, this, like, rocked this town. Like, this is a small town. Everybody knew everyone, and this happens. This is, like, just, I don't know, something out of a nightmare, or, yeah. So, I really have so many questions about, like, what those signatures were, how they were murdered, like, more than anything. Okay. So let me just move on from that, so the girls' phones were recovered to me, and they weren't with the bodies per se. They ended up finding it, like, in the woods, but not too far away. Obviously, it's not a crazy big area.
Yeah.
Not too far away, and it was kind of wet, but they were able to extract data off of this.
Yes.
Okay. So, police did release a picture of a man, like, at first they thought it was a person, said it was a person of interest, of course, who may have seen something. The way they know about this person was one of the girls had took a picture of him. And I'm not sure if they uploaded it to the cloud or if they happened to find it on their phone.
Yeah.
Or how they got access to this, but they did. So they have this picture of a guy on the bridge, which everyone in the Reddit or Facebook community that's obsessed with this case like I am calls him BG, bridge guy.
Okay.
So she has a picture of him. And so right away they're like, okay, this guy, I mean, they came out and said he's a person of interest. Oh, we think he may have saw something. But I think they really knew that he was the murderer or he was a good suspect.
He's their number one suspect.
Yes. So basically the girls took a picture of their possible killer as he was approaching them. Like, these girls must have been, first of all, so scared. I can't imagine being 13 and having a creeper, like, coming towards me on a bridge where I can't go anywhere. And having enough, like, wherewithal, like, to know, like, let me get a picture of him, you know.
But, and I may be jumping ahead. Don't they have a video of him walking?
They have a video, yes.
Okay.
They do. So they released that at a little bit later time.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead.
No, you're fine. So they released that a little bit later on. And I don't know if the picture that they have is a still of the video. Like, if they have the video and they took a still of it.
Yeah.
Yes. So they released this video to see because no one came forward. Well, I think people came forward and was like, hey, this looks like so-and-so, but none of them really panned out. So, then they released the video and was like, look at his gait. Look at, you know.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. I didn't know if you were going to get into this, but from what I understood on the video, like, he's walking on this bridge as if he's walked it 1,000 times. Because wasn't it like a real rickety and like you kind of had to kind of like watch where you're walking, not like ahead. You had to look down and make sure you weren't on a rotted board or whatever.
Exactly.
And he's just like,
well, they also say he's kind of, they say he's not walking how he would normally walk. They do say he's kind of stepping here and there. Yeah. No, I mean, probably at a quicker pace than they would go. Yeah, like he had done it before and stuff like that. Yeah, and it's eerie to me to think like this could have been like the last few moments of the girls' lives. No. It's just crazy. So they released a picture. They released the video. They end up coming out with another picture. This was very, very weird. So the video is very grainy. All right, very, very grainy. It's from a distance. It's probably an older iPhone, so you can't see. It's not like I know exactly who that is type of thing. Yeah. It's yes. So police come out with another sketch, and this sketch is like almost completely opposite of the first one they had. And they're like, where did this guy come from? This guy is definitely a lot younger. 20, 30 years younger than the original picture. Mm-hmm. And so police are saying, like, it's not both of them. Mm-hmm. It is one. And throw away the old picture. It's not like an in-between thing. It is this guy. Yeah. And they based that on a few people that had were eyewitnesses, but it was like a year later that I don't know, like they gave their initial report, and that's how they got the older gentleman's. Why am I calling him a gentleman? The older picture,
murder,
yes. And then it was like, hey, we're gonna go, in a whole new direction now, which is kind of crazy. Okay, a lot of people say that police did fumble the investigation, or there was evidence that they could have had but didn't. Mm-hmm. I don't see that yet, just because nothing has been released. To me, it doesn't seem like if you can keep your mouth shut as a law enforcement officer, like that's step one. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. I don't know. I don't know if because nothing's been released, so it's like hard to tell. Like, did they not get the DNA, or did they mess it up? Then nothing's been released. Mm-hmm. And I think one time a police let it slip that they did have DNA evidence, but it's like in one of those crazy press releases that you're like, oh my God, did he say that or did I not? And like the way that the law enforcement in this case do their like press briefings about this, like it's you're trying to grasp onto any hidden meaning. Mm-hmm. And try to figure out if he's saying anything of importance, when it's probably just he's like winging it. And he's just
probably.
Like,
I don't know what we have, but we're gonna try. Maybe
Yeah.
we might have DNA.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone, that's just like, oh, investigating this on their own is just like, did that mean something? Do they know? Because we know nothing. We know nothing. Anyways, okay, moving on. So they have a new sketch come out. Then they come out with a voice recording. And the suspect is saying, down the hill.
It gives me the chills.
Every time I've listened to it many times just because I don't even live in the state. I have no idea who it would be, but listen to it so many times, and it's definitely freaky, very, very crazy. So now police officers have a picture, a video, a voice, and we still do not know who this man is.
Gosh.
It's just like never. And DNA, I would assume DNA. There has to be some bit of DNA left.
There's gotta be.
Yes.
Somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So obviously the voice, I'm assuming, came with the video and they just separated it at first. Okay. So okay, so that came out. This was another thing that those armchair detective Reddit people were talking about. So in one statement that law enforcement made, it was about a movie called The Shack. Okay. He was reaching out to the killer, saying you could be among us right now. We will catch you, that type of stuff. Yeah. And he referenced the movie called The Shack. Nobody really knows why. It was kind of out of context, but I don't know. So, and, it's never been said if the girls were killed in that spot or if they were killed somewhere else.
Yeah.
So of course now we have all these people that are being oh my gosh, they were killed in a shack. They were killed in a cabin, and there happens to be a shack on this one person's property that backs up into that.
Yeah.
So of course they're he did it. Yes, I don't know if there's a shack, not a shack, if he was just BSing his whole way through. No idea. But so, okay. So we're going to go over a couple of people that were people of interest, or they, maybe suspect or they were acting suspicious or whatever. Okay. This first guy's name.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
The first guy's name is Paul Etter. Okay. So on July 23rd of 2019, police officers had received a tip. And police actually announced that this guy was a person of interest for the murders. He was wanted on a kidnapping of a 26-year-old woman. And so he was wanted on kidnapping of this person. And so the police are trying to apprehend him. A couple days later, police find him, they surround him, and he committed suicide during the standoff.
Yikes.
So really, okay, but it's just how much do you believe, if these sickos only like kids, would they be with a 26-year-old too? Or they're just equal opportunists, they're going to rape whoever they possibly can. Yeah. So, yep, he could have done it. I don't think we'll ever know, possibly. Well, so how does this work? Someone dies. Can you take their DNA and test it? How does that work? Or is that not just so you know? Or do they not do that?
I don't know the legalities of that. I feel like if
just take some, nobody.
They're not using it,
and there's really not going to be anybody to sue you because you would be okay,
the family.
But I guess for what is that when you say something bad about a person? Defamation.
Defamation of character.
Yes. So I guess that maybe. But really, just so you can close the case and give the family closure.
But I don't see how they don't go to his family or whoever's in charge of whatever his power of attorney or whatever you're going to call it, and say, hey, could we have a sample of the DNA?
Yeah.
To see if this is even a thing.
Or they don't want to waste money on it. I don't know. Why would you not do that? Anyways, okay. Especially if he was a suspect at that time of his death, I would definitely be. Okay. Next one. Okay, is Daniel Nations. So, I don't know why I feel like I know Daniel Nations. Not really, but
Feel good buddies?
he's in a lot of cases, like, and he doesn't even like have anything to do with, well, I don't think he has anything to do with this one, and it's like he's in other cases from around the country, so it's weird that he's like taking place here. Anyways, okay.
Yeah.
So he's a registered sex offender. All right. And I don't know if you've ever listened to this one about this in 2017 in Colorado in Woodland Park. He was charged with threatening strangers on a trail with a hatchet. But do you remember that there was a story about a guy that went out into, he lived in Colorado and he rode his bike and his wife was at home. Do you remember this case?
Yes.
And like they found his bike with like a flat tire or something like this. Okay. So anyways, he was also a suspect in that case in Colorado. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. It is very interesting. Okay. So Daniel Nations, like he's just not a good guy. All right. So fanning public speculation still further, it was reported, here it is, about that the bicyclist had been fatally shot on the same trail, like when he was there, when he was a passerby.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So there's many similarities in the case. However, law enforcement just hasn't released anything on that. He was sentenced to 3 years probation for that whole machete thing. Like 3 years probation, like he was threatening people that were like driving by with a machete. To me, you should get more than 3 years probation. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, like that's just very, like, it's so oddly specific.
Yes.
Like, and I know where Woodland Park, Colorado is. It's a very small town. Like, he's just standing on the side of the street with his machete, like waving it around, like, "Hey, dude."
No, he's on a trail.
Like I'm picturing him in the middle of town, and it's like this cute little quaint town with like 2-lane street. You know, like they're
Just
split. He's standing,
cute.
yeah. And I imagine him like in the middle, in the median, just waving his machete around, like
no, he was on a trail,
like outside of the Hungry Bear. You know?
Yeah, no, not like that. I mean, even though the trails are like barely outside of that town, like 5 seconds, but yes. Okay, so they arrest him. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Nations was transferred. So he was arrested. He was eventually transferred to Indiana. So he's in Colorado. He's arrested. Gets transferred to Indiana. But now they no longer consider him a suspect at all. So in my opinion.
But wait, did they not like test his DNA before hauling him all the way up there?
I don't know.
Oh.
He had a warrant in, he was a registered sex offender in Indiana and he didn't like update his thing.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So there was other
he's
reasons.
in jail anyway. But...
Yeah, he was in jail anyway. So I'm assuming they took his DNA and that's how they
But if he was already a registered sex offender, shouldn't they already have his DNA somewhere?
Exactly. That's what I thought too.
Huh.
I don't know. Maybe they didn't test it until that point, or he wasn't like a suspect. I don't know. You know how like cheap they are? They're like, oh, we can only test some people's. Yeah. Test them all. Anyways.
How do we get more funding for that?
Yes. Okay. Next one. Sorry, there's quite a few. I only got a couple more. These were the main ones. I'm sure there's been so many other ones that haven't said anything. Okay. So Thomas Bruce, seeing this he formerly worked as a pastor. So he was charged with fatally shooting a woman and sexually assaulting 2. Yay, churchgoer of the year right here.
Yeah.
So he committed this in broad daylight. And then they also talked about like these 2 women were like they were smaller, like petiter. So petiter?
More petite.
More petite.
No such thing as more petiter.
More petiter. Just, okay. So anyways. They were smaller in stature, so they were like, oh, maybe they thought they were kids or young people, but they were older. So anyways, so Bruce was charged with that stuff, but they never really linked him to Delphi. And if he sexually assaulted these 2 people, they would have his DNA as well. So to me, like these people they've never said officially like people are cleared. They just said no longer of interest.
So this is what makes me wonder if they even actually have DNA.
That's true. I know.
Because if they slipped and said we have DNA, but actually meant we don't have any DNA.
I know. Like.
Then I think that these other suspects would have easily been.
Yeah. Washed away. Like,
yeah,
we don't care about you.
guess what? We have a warrant. Let's swab your cheek and be done.
Yeah, let's get this over with. I'm sure I don't know. I would assume that there was DNA unless they messed it up and they can't use it.
Or it went missing from the evidence logger. How many times has that happened?
All the time. Especially, I mean, who knows? It could be someone within.
It could be.
But they have his picture. They would know to me. I think they would know. Anyways. Okay. So Indiana State Police, Kim Riley, says the investigators have interviewed over 1,000 people. Yikes. I mean, that was witnesses, suspects. Those were anybody that had any suspicious activity on the day that they went missing. Someone called into work, anything like that. They did this. They do believe that the man is either from Delphi or knows the Delphi area very, very well, because he would have to know those trails and where they went.
Yeah.
That he could walk towards the girls and there was nowhere for them to go.
Yeah. He
had to have been there. So there's tons of podcast interviews with Kelsey. Kelsey was the sister that dropped him off. She's very, very active and trying to get her sisters. I can't imagine.
She's got to have so much guilt.
So much guilt. Yes. Law enforcement do say this case is still active. It's not cold. They still have, I would hope, like lots of leads. They get in tips like crazy. This is a case that actually, I don't want to say they got a slap on the wrist, but like the Reddit people, all these podcast true crime fanatics would do side-by-sides of random people that they found off of Facebook.
That's the worst, though.
Yes, and they were ruining people's lives with this. So law enforcement did have to come out and be like, don't do this. Like, this is not appropriate. If you have a tip, please send it up to proper channels.
Yes,
I am in a Facebook group that we don't care about that. Well, not we. I have no one to compare. I just look at theirs, but they still do the side by side. Some of them are striking resemblance of and some of them will still use the old sketch, even though police say no. There's also talk that there could have been two people, like one to tell him to go down the hill and someone down the hill already. Almost as a trap, but that would have had to have been planned, and then they had to have been waiting for the perfect opportunity. But like, how are you just gonna stand in the woods for how long
and wait for someone that's your type, quote unquote?
Like, it just seems mind-boggling. Like, they didn't know, unless they saw them get out at the parking lot and they saw they were alone. So then they were like, hey, I don't know how much time. I mean, well, it could have been like an hour, so I mean, I guess that's enough time to maybe prepare. So yeah, there's so much not known out there about this case. And it's like, how is it not solved, though? Yeah. Like, having all of that. You don't even have all of that sometimes, and you can catch the killer. Like, way less. They also... Oh my gosh, my point just went out the air. Yeah, it's crazy that it's not solved yet. Hopefully the police obviously know more. Maybe they know exactly who did it and they're just building their case right now. Because
hope.
You can only sometimes have one chance at these things.
Yeah.
And they don't want these little girls to not have any closure or not have justice.
These young women. They weren't little girls. They were young women.
Yeah, I know. But I just think about 13.
They're babies, though. They're still babies.
14, yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. They would have been seniors this year, I read.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because they were in 8th grade.
That's so sad.
It's horrible. That town will never be the same.
No.
Yeah. They are building a new sports complex or softball complex in the girls' name and stuff like that. Because
that's good.
Yeah, they played on the same team and stuff. So it's just...
I feel horrible for their families, though. Like, they need something.
Yeah. They need
I just can't believe there's not more evidence than that. Like,
I think there is, because if you listen to the voice recording that says down the hill, there's a part like they're taking stuff out, and I don't know if they're taking out with the girls talking, because that would be very depressing, I don't know. It'd be to hear them.
Like, they're not releasing all of the
they're not releasing all the recording at all.
Okay. So they're only pulling out in hopes that you can detect that person's cadence.
Yes.
Does this sound like anyone you know?
Yes. And it's kind of distinct in my opinion. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. And you never know how different if she had the phone in her pocket because she's trying to conceal it.
Yeah, is it muffled?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is he disguising his voice?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can make your voice sound just about like anything.
Exactly. So, I don't know. This case is just definitely one that I just want to scream about. I just can't even imagine what their families are going through. So, with the not knowing. So, that's depressing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we need answers for that one. So, if you are into the armchair detective
Business.
sleuthing, business sleuthing, or like maybe we should get, I think the people that do that Don't F with Cats show need to be involved in this.
Yes.
Like,
let's get some crazy people on it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So if you're into that, you know, like if you're good at looking at footage or listening to footage or whatever, Google it, get out there and let's see if we can help them.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So next week we have
what's
after Indiana?
Iowa. Oh, I just sounded super country there.
You did. You've been hanging out with me too long. Okay. Iowa and then...
Oh my gosh. Is there any more Iowa?
Sing your song.
Indiana, Iowa. No.
Kentucky?
Kansas.
Kansas. Okay. So Iowa and Kansas,
Eek.
maybe?
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll learn our alphabet and our states soon. Maybe by the end of this, we'll have it all in order.
We should know them all in order.
Yeah. So new episodes every Monday.
Every Monday.
What is it? Subscribe, review,
I don't
share.
know.
What are you supposed to say at the end of this?
I need to ask my kids.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Subscribe, and share. I don't know.
Can you like it?
I have no idea.
Anyway, it's on...
That's YouTube. That's
Apple.
YouTube.
Yeah. On Apple, on Stitcher, on Google
Spotify.
Podcasts, and Alexa devices.
Yes, apparently people like to listen to us on their Alexa device.
Yeah. Hit up your Alexa and say, Alexa, play Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet.
Yes. And see what happens.
We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.